Today, St. Paul urges Timothy that money is the root of all evils. And that makes me a little nervous because my dad is a stockbroker. So I'm like, is Pop's in trouble with that? I remember one time coming home and Dad had a gift from one of his coworkers at this big finance company. And there was a picture. There was a cartoon of a man with a ton of money. And there was a caption there. It said, "Whoever said money is the root of all evils never had any." And I thought that was pretty clever. I thought that was really clever. My dad and I had a good laugh. And it was framed, so we were thinking that we would hang it up because it was a gift. The next day, I saw the picture again. It wasn't hung up. It was on the corner. The following day, it was still at that corner. And then after that, I didn't see it. Now, one, my dad is a little oblivious, and he forgets things a lot. But two, there was something in that spoke to me. He had other things more important to hang up than that picture. And then that asks us the question, what are we hanging up in our hearts? Are we hanging up pictures of virtue? Or are we hanging up pictures that make fun of the virtues? Are they pictures that are witty and clever, but they're not conducive to our faith? St. Paul writes to Timothy, and what's distinctive about this letter and to Timothy and Titus is that these letters are for the shepherds. They're not for the sheep. They are not for the congregation. They are for the ministers of the word. In a way, they are for us. We need to take and urge these things. And what he talks about in this letter is that we need to preserve our faith. We need to stay true, and we need to carry on. Now, I mean, that's obvious common sense stuff, right? So why the letter? It's because in our human nature, we tend to forget. We tend to forget why we're here, why we're in these brown robes, and why we're following the gospel. And the other thing is, following the gospel is difficult. In Luke chapter 8, the evangelist portrays Jesus as itinerant, so he has no stability. He has no room to go and watch Seinfeld in. He has no kitchen to cook apple pie at 4 a.m. He's always traveling, and he's living off the means of other people. And then two, Jesus is hanging out with Galilean women. And in that time, to be even caught talking publicly with a woman was scandalous. So that doesn't sound like fun, does it? You're always living off the means of other people, you don't know where you're staying at, and you're surrounded by people who are shunned. People who, if you're associated with, they think less of you as well. So what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do when we have all this adversity, when we forget, and when we're faced with this difficult task of living the gospel life? The tool of remembering. St. Paul writes a letter to Timothy to remind him to hold true to the faith. And so, what are our reminders? Why did we come here? For myself, and I don't usually like to talk about this, but this is my reminder. As you all know, I went on a retreat that changed my life. I went on a retreat where I encountered God, and I went at a retreat where I fell in love with God. So when I decided to join the Capuchins, I knew I would forget. I knew I would forget that feeling I had on that day. So I decided to get a tattoo against my mother's wishes. And one of the things that struck me about the Jerusalem cross was that there are 4 Christian crosses, and those symbolize the 4 evangelists. And they're on corners because it is the mission to spread the gospel to the 4 corners of the world. And I wanted to be reminded of that mission. I got a shadow on the cross because I wanted that symbolism of the sun rising, casting a shadow to symbolize a new day in my life. Because when I was converted, I felt like the sun was finally shining. I got it on my left arm because all the pictures of St. Francis that I saw, he was holding the Bible at his left arm. And I got it specifically here so that every time I prayed the office, there would be that reminder. This is why you're here, because you fell in love. So, when we were reminded, we exemplify Jesus in Luke chapter 8. We are itinerant, and we are with the people who are cast out of society. Today's saint was, thank you, Joe, for the tidbits earlier, was a military chaplain, and he also cared for the sick. There was that itinerancy and hanging out with the shunned people. And our Father Francis was itinerant, and he ministered to the lepers. So as we continue on in our journey, let's hold fast to remember that we have to stay true to our commitment in this life. We have to remember God's providence in everything we do. We have to surround ourselves with those who no one else wants to be with. And we have to preach the gospel. And the way we could do that is by keeping reminders of why we chose to be here. And those reminders are what we need to hang up.